For millions, Les Gold was the undisputed king of pawn, the face of Detroit grit and shrewd deals on the hit reality TV show Hardcore Pawn. His American jewelry and loan became a cultural phenomenon, a chaotic stage where fortunes were made and lost in the blink of an eye. But beneath the glitz of reality TV, a far more complex and turbulent reality was brewing. Les Gold risked everything to build his empire, and he nearly lost it all. Not from outrageous customers or daring heists, but from within, from the very people he trusted. Hardcore Pawn, the show that catapulted Les Gold to fame, was built on a captivating blend of chaos, larger-than-life personalities, and deals that could make your head spin. But what viewers didn't see, what lay hidden beneath the surface drama, was the real-life struggle to keep American jewelry and loan afloat amidst a sea of betrayal and financial turmoil. It wasn't just a TV set. It was a family business, a high-stakes battleground where cash was king and conflict was currency. Les, alongside his fiery son Seth and determined daughter Ashley, ran the pawn shop with an iron fist, navigating a daily onslaught of wild customers, outrageous negotiations, and the occasional brawl. Yet, the most devastating betrayals, the ones that truly shook the foundation of Les Gold's empire, came not from the streets of Detroit, but from the shadows within his own shop, from the very employees he had placed his trust in. You might imagine that working in a pawn shop as famous as American Jewelry and Loan, a place constantly under the glare of security cameras and national television, would inspire employees to be extra cautious, to walk the straight and narrow. Security cameras were everywhere. The Gold family's watchful eyes were always present. Millions of viewers were tuning in weekly. But incredibly, some employees grew complacent, a little too comfortable, perhaps believing they could outsmart the system, or worse, outsmart Les Gold himself. And one of these employees, in a twist that stunned Les to his core, was the last person he ever suspected. To understand the depth of this betrayal, we must rewind to one of the biggest scandals to ever rock Hardcore Pawn, an inside job that exposed a rot at the heart of American Jewelry and Loan. The perpetrator? Joe, the shop's head of security, a man Les had entrusted with the safety of his business and his family. Yes, you heard that right. The very person responsible for safeguarding the store, for protecting its valuable assets, was the one stealing from it. A wolf in sheep's clothing preying on the very flock he was sworn to protect. And this wasn't petty theft, not a few trinkets slipped into a pocket. We are talking about thousands upon thousands of dollars worth of stolen jewelry, a systematic pilfering that threatened to bleed American Jewelry and Loan dry. Les, a seasoned veteran of the pawn game, sensed something amiss. A gut feeling, a nagging unease, told him that something wasn't adding up. Trusting his instincts, he devised a cunning trap. He strategically placed a valuable diamond ring in a deliberately conspicuous spot, subtly obscured to appear accidentally forgotten. The next morning, his suspicions were chillingly confirmed. The ring was gone. Now, Les Gold is not a man prone to panic. He knew something was wrong, terribly wrong, but he needed irrefutable proof. So he turned to the ever-watchful eyes of his security system, reviewing the footage, and what he saw chilled him to the bone. Joe, the loyal head of security, the man he had trusted implicitly, was caught red-handed, on camera, brazenly swiping jewelry. Not just once, but repeatedly, over days, a pattern of calculated theft unfolding before Les's disbelieving eyes. Let's be clear, $77,000 worth of stolen merchandise is not petty cash. It's a staggering sum, representing a significant blow to any business, let alone a family-run pawn shop. And the chilling realization dawned on Les. How long had this been going on? How much more had been stolen, undetected, under his very nose? As the police led Joe away in handcuffs, Les Gold was left grappling with a profound sense of betrayal, the sting of which cut deeper than any financial loss. This wasn't just a TV drama. This was his life, his business, his family, violated by someone he had considered one of his own. But Joe's betrayal, as shocking as it was not an isolated incident. Hardcore Pawn, in its raw, unfiltered portrayal of American Jewelry and Loan, inadvertently exposed a deeper, more systemic problem. Employee theft was not an anomaly, it was a recurring threat, a constant drain on the business. It wasn't just Joe. There were others. Instances of employees pilfering inventory, skimming profits, eroding the very foundation of trust upon which the pawn shop was built. Each discovery felt like a personal affront, a betrayal not just of Les, but of the entire Gold family, their legacy, their livelihood. Seth and Ashley, Les's children and partners in the business, were understandably furious, their trust shattered. They began to question everyone, suspicion casting a long shadow over the entire staff. Was there a larger conspiracy at play? Was Joe just the tip of the iceberg? How long had this been happening, unnoticed? Could anyone truly be trusted now? Working at American Jewelry and Loan was never meant to be easy. Les Gold ran a tight ship, demanding loyalty, honesty, and a relentless work ethic. Yet, even within this strict environment, some individuals succumbed to temptation, finding ways to exploit vulnerabilities, to take advantage of the system. Some employees, lulled into a false sense of security by the familiar routine, grew too comfortable, perhaps believing they could outsmart the watchful eyes of Les and his ever-present security cameras. Others, driven by greed or desperation, thought they could outmaneuver the system, that they were clever enough to steal without detection. But in a pawn shop saturated with surveillance, cameras on every wall, every corner, every aisle, it was never a question of asterisk. If asterisk, they would be caught. But asterisk when asterisk. And here's where the line between reality TV and stark reality blurred. This wasn't just manufactured drama for ratings. This was real life, unfolding in all its messy, heartbreaking complexity. Bobby Janiak, known to hardcore pawn viewers as Bobby J, a former employee, later confirmed in an interview what many had long suspected: the thefts, the betrayals, the internal conflicts. It was all 100% real. There was no faking it, no scripted drama, Bobby J revealed, dispelling any lingering doubts about the authenticity of the show's portrayal of the pawn shop's internal struggles. These thefts, they really happened. Bobby J recounted how, after Joe's arrest, the atmosphere in the shop palpably changed. The once electric, often chaotic vibe shifted, replaced by a palpable tension, a pervasive unease. Everyone was on edge, acutely aware of the ever-present scrutiny, every employee suddenly feeling like they were under a microscope, their every action, every interaction, potentially under suspicion. And honestly, they were. Consider the sheer scale of Les Gold's operation. Millions of dollars worth of inventory, a treasure trove of gold, diamonds, watches, high-end electronics, lay vulnerable within the walls of American Jewelry and Loan. In the wrong hands, in the grasp of someone driven by greed, these valuables could vanish in an instant. The Golds had witnessed the darker side of humanity countless times. Customers attempting elaborate scams, desperate individuals resorting to violence over perceived low offers, even audacious attempts by imposters posing as police officers to rob the place. But the threat emanating from asterisk within asterisk, the betrayal by their own employees, was a different beast altogether. A more insidious, more emotionally damaging form of violation. But this devastating employee theft scandal was merely one act in a larger drama that unfolded around Hardcore Pawn. While these internal struggles played out on screen, a far more significant, far-reaching crisis was brewing. A scandal that would shake not just the pawn shop, not just the reality show, but Les Gold's carefully constructed reputation to its very core. To truly understand the magnitude of this impending storm, we must delve deeper into Les Gold's past, exploring the formative experiences that molded him into the formidable, often unyielding businessman the world came to know. To truly understand Les Gold, the fearless businessman millions watched on Hardcore Pawn, we must journey back decades, long before the reality TV cameras ever rolled, back to the gritty streets of Detroit where his story began. American Jewelry and Loan was not a sudden creation, not a stroke of luck, not the result of a single shrewd investment. It was forged in the crucible of hard work, years of relentless grinding in a cutthroat industry where a single misstep, one bad deal, could cost you everything, and where misplaced trust could lead to utter ruin. For Les, these harsh lessons were learned early, and one particular lesson, etched in blood and tragedy, nearly cost him his life. In 1971, decades before he became a household name, Les was working alongside his grandfather in the family pawn shop when an ordinary day took a terrifying, deadly turn. It was December 31st, the cusp of a new year, around noon, when an armed robber, a shadowy figure of menace, stormed into the store, shattering the mundane routine with the deafening clang of fear. Pawn shops, particularly in urban centers like Detroit, have always been inherently high-risk enterprises, magnets for desperation and criminality. They deal in the very commodities that fuel illicit desires: cash, jewelry, gold, and easily fensible high-end electronics, precisely the kind of valuables that attract the predatory gaze of criminals. Les had witnessed trouble before: petty theft, heated arguments, the occasional desperate act. But this time, the situation escalated with terrifying speed, spiraling into a tragedy that would forever haunt his memory. In the ensuing chaos of the robbery, gunfire erupted within the confines of the pawn shop, the sharp, deafening cracks echoing amidst the pandemonium. A police officer, bravely responding to the unfolding emergency, was tragically shot and killed in the line of duty. Another man, an innocent bystander caught in the crossfire, also lost his life that day, transforming what should have been an ordinary afternoon into a horrific tragedy that left an indelible scar on Les's soul. He was there, a witness to the carnage, a first-hand observer of the senseless violence that ripped through his family business. He walked away physically unscathed, miraculously untouched by the bullets that flew, but he was forever changed, forever marked by the trauma. He knew with chilling certainty from that moment forward that nothing in life was guaranteed, that in an instant, everything could be irrevocably taken away: hopes, dreams, even life itself. For most people, experiencing such a horrific event, witnessing such senseless violence firsthand, would be utterly debilitating, a trauma from which they might never fully recover. They might succumb to fear, retreating from risk, shying away from anything that even remotely resembled danger. They might walk away from the business, from the pawn shop, seeking a safer, less volatile path. Les Gold, however, reacted in a way that defied expectation, in a manner that would define his character, his business acumen, his very essence. He did the opposite. Instead of allowing the trauma to break him, instead of succumbing to fear and retreating into safety, he made a conscious, unwavering decision. He would never back down. He would never allow fear to dictate his life, to cripple his ambitions, to control his destiny. And he would never, ever allow anyone to take advantage of him or his business ever again. That life-altering moment, the December 31st robbery, indelibly shaped Les Gold, transforming him into the shrewd, uncompromising businessman the world came to know on Hardcore Pawn. It forged his steely resolve, hardened his negotiating tactics, and informed his approach to managing people, deals, and even his own employees. This is the crucible in which Les Gold was forged. This is why, years later, when Hardcore Pawn exploded into a global phenomenon, Les ran American Jewelry and Loan with an iron fist, a firm grip on every aspect of the business, from the smallest transaction to the largest deal. American Jewelry and Loan wasn't just a pawn shop. It was a meticulously crafted, high-volume machine, a finely tuned engine that handled more transactions in a single day than some banks process in a week. Every day, over 1,000 people streamed through its doors, a constant influx of humanity, with 600 to 800 new loans being written up, and another 300 to 400 customers seeking to reclaim their pawned possessions. When you're dealing with that level of volume, with that constant churn of cash, goods, and human interaction, there's simply no room for weakness. There's no time for hesitation, for second-guessing, for sentimentality. Decisions had to be swift, decisive, and always, always in the best interest of the business. This relentless, pragmatic mindset permeated every facet of Les's philosophy, shaping his worldview, his approach to life itself. Trust, in Les Gold's world, was not freely given. It had to be earned, painstakingly over time, through consistent actions and unwavering loyalty. And once that trust was broken, once the line was crossed, there was no turning back, no forgiveness, no second chances. This is why the betrayals, the inside jobs, the employee thefts hit Les so profoundly, so personally. Because after everything he had built, after surviving one of the most terrifying moments imaginable, after decades of relentless dedication to his business, betrayal didn't come from a stranger in the night. Not from a masked robber wielding a gun. Not from an angry customer seeking to cheat him. It came from within, from someone he had personally hired, someone he had taken a chance on, someone he had genuinely believed in, someone who stood side by side with him day after day behind the counter of his beloved store. Les Gold had always prided himself on his ability to assess character, to discern trustworthiness, to see the good in people, even when others couldn't. He believed in giving people second chances, understanding that life could be a brutal teacher, that not everyone started with a perfect record, that even good people sometimes made bad decisions. This is why, over the years, Les had extended a hand to those who had stumbled, rehiring employees who had left under questionable circumstances, offering a path back to redemption for those who had lost their way. Some had battled personal demons, addiction, financial hardship. Others had simply made poor choices, straying from the path of honesty and integrity. But if Les, in his seasoned judgment, believed they were genuinely worth the risk, that they possessed the potential for redemption, he gave them another shot, a chance to prove themselves anew. That was precisely the case with Amy and Rich, two employees whose return to American Jewelry and Loan had already sown seeds of tension and unease within the shop. Amy had been a valued member of the team before, but her abrupt departure, her sudden vanishing act, had left Les questioning her reliability, her commitment. She hadn't just quit, she had disappeared, leaving no notice, no explanation, nothing but an empty space behind the counter. Normally, in Les Gold's world, that would have been the end of the story. A closed chapter, a bridge burned beyond repair. But Amy's uncle, a longtime, deeply loyal employee who had served American Jewelry and Loan faithfully for years, intervened, personally imploring Les to reconsider, to grant his niece a second chance. Against his better judgment, against the ingrained instincts honed by years of navigating the treacherous waters of the pawn business, Les relented, agreeing to give Amy another opportunity. Seth, ever the pragmatist, ever the more cynical of the two, vehemently disagreed with his father's decision, arguing with characteristic bluntness that someone who had walked away once, who had demonstrated such a lack of responsibility and respect, could easily and likely would do it again. Rich, on the other hand, was a different case altogether, a more complex, more personally painful situation. He had been a fixture at American Jewelry and Loan for years, a veteran of the pawn wars, someone Les had personally trained, mentored, and at one point placed complete faith in. But over time, something had shifted, imperceptibly at first, then more overtly. Rich started exhibiting questionable judgment, making decisions that seemed increasingly reckless, increasingly self-serving. Les began to detect a disturbing pattern of behavior, a subtle but unmistakable erosion of the integrity he had once so readily attributed to Rich. Yet despite his growing unease, despite the nagging doubts that gnawed at his gut, Les hesitated to act, clinging to the hope that experience, training, and the weight of responsibility would eventually steer Rich back onto the right path, that the man he had once trusted would somehow re-emerge from beneath the cloud of doubt that had begun to gather around him. What Les Gold, in his characteristic blend of shrewdness and perhaps misplaced optimism, failed to fully grasp at the time was that these very choices, these acts of leniency, these second chances extended to Amy and Rich, were about to backfire spectacularly, in ways he could never have foreseen, unleashing a chain of events that would test the limits of his resilience and forever alter the landscape of American Jewelry and Loan. The weight of betrayal, the sting of disappointment, and the relentless pressure of maintaining his empire. These were the burdens Les Gold carried, unseen by the millions who tuned in each week for the televised spectacle of hardcore pawn. The illusion of control, the carefully constructed image of the unwavering patriarch, began to crack under the strain of internal strife and external pressures. But Les Gold, a survivor forged in the fires of Detroit's pawn industry, was not one to crumble easily. He would face these challenges head-on with the same grit, determination, and unyielding spirit that had defined his life and built his empire. The scandals, the betrayals, the financial headwinds, they were all just another day at American Jewelry and Loan for the King of Pawn. And as for what really became of Les Gold after the cameras stopped rolling, he didn't fade away, didn't retreat into obscurity like so many reality TV stars before him. He doubled down, digging deeper into the world he knew best, the world of pawn, a world as unpredictable, as chaotic, and as captivating as life itself. He remained at the helm of American Jewelry and Loan, a constant presence, a steady hand guiding his family business through the ever-shifting tides of fortune and fame. The show may have ended, but Les Gold's story, much like the pawn business itself, was far from over. It was a story of resilience, of survival, of the enduring power of the human spirit to adapt, to overcome, and to keep fighting, even when the odds seemed stacked against you. And that, perhaps, is the most hardcore truth of all. But what do you think? Did Les Gold handle these betrayals the right way? Could he have done anything differently? Share your thoughts, your opinions, your own pawn shop stories in the comments below. We want to hear from you. And if you want to delve deeper into the untold stories of reality TV, the hidden dramas behind the fame, and the real lives of the stars we love to watch, then be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because in Hollywood, as in life, the truth is always more complex, more compelling, and far more hardcore than what meets the eye.